Colons are punctuation marks that illustrate or expand on the information that comes before it. In general, colons follow independent clauses and introduce words and phrases, or they can focus attention on a list. Colons are often confused with semicolons. However, colons are used to connect a sentence with a related sentence or fragment to indicate reason or explanation, whereas semicolons are used to connect two clauses for emphasis. In this video, we will explain when and how to use colons. Colons are used to introduce a word or phrase or to preface a list that comes after the colon. Let's first look at colons used to introduce a word or phrase. Colons are used to separate two clauses when the second clause explains or illustrates the first clause. For this usage, colons function in much the same way as semicolons. Let's look at some examples. When colons are used for this function, the text preceding the colon must be an independent clause or a complete sentence. Also, it is important to note that the second clause following the colon should not be capitalized. Next, colons can be used to introduce a list when the list comes after an independent clause. It is important to note that the clause before the colon should be a complete sentence. Let's look at some incorrect and correct usages for this function. In this example, the clause coming before the colon is not a complete sentence. It is a dependent clause that ends with the main verb are. In order to use a colon in this sentence to introduce these elements, the first part of the sentence should be rewritten as a full sentence. Let's take a look at some similar examples. The first part of the sentence is a dependent clause that ends with of. As with the previous example, the first part of the sentence should be rewritten as a full sentence. Or in this case, since there are only 3 items in the list and each item is not long, it may be okay to simply omit the colon. Another important thing to note when incorporating colons into lists is that colons should be used only when the list does not fit naturally into the sentence. For example, if phrases such as and including are used in the sentence, these phrases already indicate that a list should follow. So in this case, using colons would be unnecessary. Using colons correctly can be quite tricky. Here are some things you should be careful about when using colons. Regarding the colons used to separate two independent clauses, the two independent clauses should be related by content, and the second clause should emphasize or add important details about the first clause. If the two clauses are not closely related, use another punctuation mark, such as a period or conjunction, to link them. Colons are rather powerful punctuation marks, so it is better to use them sparingly within texts. A well-placed colon calls the reader's attention and says, "This information contains something important." Since colons are so attention-grabbing, avoid using too many and weakening their impact. Do not capitalize the first word after the colon unless it is a proper noun, a section of a quote, or the first sentence in a series. Visit wordvice.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel for upcoming videos focused on helping you improve your academic writing.